Have you ever asked yourself why certain types of pain keep showing up in your life? Almost like an old friend who doesn't know when to leave. You change jobs, change cities, even change partners, but the same wound reopens in a different form. This repetition isn't random, it's a whisper from your unconscious, begging to be heard, to be seen, to be healed. Until we stop and listen, life keeps handing us the same lesson, wrapped in different faces. Sometimes we think we've moved on, but the truth is, we've only changed the scenery, not the story inside. The characters look different, the stage is new, but the emotional script remains the same. Until we look inward and question our patterns, we are like actors reliving the same tragic scene again and again. The outer world is only a mirror can. We dare to look into it without turning away. The repetition is not a punishment, it's an invitation. An invitation to heal something deep within that has been abandoned. Like a child tugging at your sleeve, your pain keeps coming back because it wants to be understood. It isn't the world that is cruel, it's your inner wounds, asking you to pause, to breathe, to look. Will you finally turn toward that part of you with compassion instead of shame? We attract what resonates with the frequencies we carry inside. If we are vibrating in fear, in unworthiness, in unresolved grief, then we unknowingly invite experiences that echo those very wounds. It's not about blaming ourselves. It's about waking up to the energy we live in. Healing doesn't begin when pain disappears. It begins when awareness enters. What are you vibrating today, love? Or the echoes of a forgotten wound? Breaking the cycle begins with courage. The courage to stay when you want to run, to feel when you want to numb, to question your automatic reactions and sit with discomfort instead of escaping it. This is where transformation happens, not in denial, but in the heart of presence. Pain doesn't need to be repeated if it has been witnessed. So ask yourself now, what part of you is still waiting to be seen? Sometimes, pain is not just what happens to us, it's the meaning we attach to it, the story we keep repeating. We get hurt once, and our mind builds a whole identity around that moment. I'm not lovable, I'm always abandoned, nothing ever works out for me. And from then on, we begin to search for situations that confirm that story. But what if the story was never true? What if it was just the voice of fear, not the voice of reality? There's a reason Buddhist teachings emphasize awareness. Without it, we sleepwalk through life, pulled by unconscious habits and fears. But when we observe, truly observe the mind's patterns, we start to see the trap. We stop identifying with every emotion. We begin to question, is this really me, or is this just conditioning? That moment of awareness is the first crack in the cycle. Most people aren't aware they are repeating. They believe life is just unlucky or unfair. But karma isn't punishment. It's a teacher. It brings back the same experience until we respond differently. The moment we choose presence over reaction, compassion over anger, awareness over avoidance, we begin to write a new future. The past stops echoing when we stop speaking its language. Sometimes we inherit the repetition. Our parents carried certain wounds, our culture passed down fears, and we unknowingly continue the cycle. Generational pain is subtle but persistent. But here's the beauty. Cycles can be broken. And you simply by becoming aware, by choosing differently, can be the one to end a story that is repeated for generations. That's not just healing, that's liberation. The pain that keeps returning isn't here to punish. It's here to free you. It wants you to stop running and start listening. It wants you to move from why is this happening to me, to what is this showing me about myself. That single shift changes everything. From being a victim of life, you become a student of it. and slowly, you begin to walk with wisdom rather than fear. Have you noticed how the same type of person enters your life again and again? Different name, different face, but the same emotional sting. This isn't coincidence, it's reflection. They are mirrors, showing you the parts of yourself still wounded, still afraid, still seeking something outside that must be found within. Until you heal that internal hunger, you will keep calling in reflections, not relationships. Your mind is a master at finding what it believes is true. If it believes you're unworthy, it will find rejection. If it believes you are always left behind, it will interpret silence as abandonment. The mind protects its story like a fortress, but mindfulness is the gentle visitor that enters and says, "Let's open a window." Are you willing to challenge the script your pain has written? Sometimes repetition feels safe. We hate the pain, but at least it's familiar. There's a strange comfort in what we know, even if it hurts. But familiarity is not freedom. Staying in the known may feel easier, but growth lives in the unknown. True healing begins when we say, "I'm ready to stop surviving and start living." Will you choose the discomfort of change over the comfort of pain? Buddha once said, "Nothing ever exists entirely alone. Everything is in relation to everything else." Your inner wounds are not isolated. They are connected to your habits, your choices, your thoughts. If you want to break free, you don't need to force your way out. You need to understand the web. With clarity, the knots begin to loosen. Healing is not a battle, it's a soft unraveling. So many of us seek closure through others waiting for an apology, a confession, an explanation. But emotional freedom isn't granted by someone else. It is born the moment you decide to stop needing what they could never give. Closure is not an answer, it's acceptance. And in that quiet choice, the repetition loses its power over you. Emotional pain repeats not because you're weak, but because there's something within you that still believes you deserve it. Somewhere along the way, you were taught that suffering equals love, that struggle equals value. So you wear emotional scars like medals, believing they make you worthy. But what if worthiness requires nothing to prove? What if peace is your birthright, not your reward? There's a moment in every healing journey when you realize you're no longer blaming the world. You begin to see how every experience shaped you not to break you, but to wake you. The shift is subtle but powerful. You no longer ask, "Why did this happen to me?" but rather, "What is this trying to teach me?" That question changes everything. That question begins the return to self. When you stop reacting, the pattern stops repeating. It's that simple, yet that difficult. Pain wants you to react. It wants to keep you looping in anger, fear, and avoidance. But the moment you observe instead of react, you step outside the cycle. You rise above it not in arrogance, but in wisdom. Silence, in this case, is not weakness, it's evolution. You may wonder, how many lifetimes have I lived this same pain? Buddhism speaks of samsara, cycle of birth and rebirth, not just in form, but in emotion. Every unresolved wound carries over, shaping the next experience. But through mindfulness, you can break that chain. You become the moment where generations of suffering finally exhale. You are the pivot point. The pain that visits you again and again isn't a curse, it's your soul's persistence. It wants to be seen, held, healed. You don't need to fight it. You need to sit with it, listen, and then gently choose differently. Over time, the wound becomes wisdom. The scar becomes a symbol of strength. And you, just by staying present, become someone new. Sometimes the hardest part is realizing that healing doesn't feel like joy at first. It often feels like grief for the years spent chasing the wrong people, for the parts of yourself you abandoned to be loved, for the cycles you didn't know you were caught in. But grief is not the end. It's the soft mourning before rebirth. Let yourself feel it. That's how you make space for something new. You may wonder, if I've suffered enough, why isn't it over? But healing is not about time served, it's about consciousness applied. You can sit in pain for decades and still repeat it tomorrow, or you can become conscious today and begin to shift. Awareness is not slow. It is immediate, radical, life-altering. The question is, are you ready to see clearly, even if it hurts? There is a moment when your soul whispers, "This is enough," not in bitterness, but in clarity. You stop blaming others, you stop reliving the story, and you begin to move in a new way, not running, not resisting, but walking forward. That whisper is the sound of liberation. And if you can hear it, even just once, your whole life begins to change. The repetition of pain doesn't mean you're failing. It means you're still in the lesson. And lessons are not punishments. They are invitations. Each emotional loop is a teacher, patiently waiting for you to stop reacting and start listening. Ask yourself, what am I still not seeing? What truth do I keep avoiding? The answer is never outside. It's always within. The Buddha taught that the root of suffering is attachment, to desire, to identity, to the illusion of permanence. Pain repeats when we cling, but when we soften our grip, when we let go of needing things to be a certain way, suffering loses its edge. Letting go is not giving up. It's choosing peace over control. It's choosing the present over the past. Every time you pause before reacting, you reclaim a part of yourself. The old pain begs you to respond as you always have, defend, attack, withdraw. But when you respond with awareness instead of instinct, something breaks. Not you, but the cycle. One small breath, one different choice, and the entire path ahead begins to shift. That is the power of mindfulness. It rewrites your future in the present. It's tempting to believe others hold the key to our healing. We wait for closure, for validation, for an apology that may never come. But the truth is, your healing was never meant to be in someone else's hands. When you stop waiting for someone to make it right and choose to make peace yourself, you don't just heal, you awaken. Have you ever noticed how pain speaks the loudest in silence? When the world quiets, that's when the unresolved parts of you begin to stir. This is not a punishment, it's a call. The silence is your soul's voice asking, are you ready to stop running? To sit with what hurts until it transforms. Stillness is where pain becomes teacher and awareness becomes light. You might think letting go means forgetting, but that's a misunderstanding. Letting go means remembering without reliving. It means holding the past with compassion, but not letting it guide your every step. You don't erase the memory, you change the meaning. And that, quietly, gently, is how the same pain finally stops returning. There is no timeline for healing, no fixed point when you'll be free. But each moment you choose awareness over reaction, love over fear, peace over control, you heal, not in a dramatic flash, but in gentle repetition. Like waves smoothing a jagged shore. And one day, without realizing it, you'll wake up and feel different, lighter, freer, whole. What if every repeated pain wasn't a trap, but a mirror? A mirror reflecting what still needs love, still longs for understanding. The universe doesn't punish, it reveals. It brings the same situations not to hurt you, but to help you respond differently. The question is not why, again, but what have I not yet seen with compassion? Many carry a hidden belief that they must suffer to prove their goodness, that love is earned through endurance. But this is not love, it's conditioning. True love, the kind that frees, begins when you stop needing to hurt in order to feel worthy. You are not here to suffer. You are here to awaken. Sometimes we stay in painful loops because they feel familiar. Familiarity brings comfort, even when it hurts. But healing asks you to enter the unknown, to walk a path where you don't know the outcome, only your intention, and that takes courage. It's not that the pain is stronger, it's that your peace hasn't been chosen enough. The Buddha once said, "Nothing can harm you as much as your own unguarded thoughts." These thoughts, looping with emotion, create the prison we call repetition. But when you begin to observe, then not believe, not fight, just notice, they lose power. This is the start of inner freedom, not from pain, but from identification with it. If you're tired of attracting the same pain, maybe it's time to stop asking what's wrong with me and start asking what part of me needs love. Healing doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers. It sits with you in the dark and says, "You don't have to repeat this anymore." That whisper is sacred. Follow it. Not everything that hurts is meant to be avoided. Some pain arrives to wake us from numbness. It knocks until we answer, not with resistance, but with presence. When we finally sit with what aches, without distraction or escape, we realize the pain was never the enemy. It was the messenger. And the message was always, return to yourself. We often ask, why do they keep hurting me? But the deeper question is, why do I keep returning to what hurts? Repetition begins not in the other, but in our unhealed longing to be seen, chosen, saved. No one can rescue us from our own pattern except us. And the first step is to stop calling it love when it's really fear. You're not broken for falling into the same pain. You're human. Healing is not a perfect line upwards, a spiral. Sometimes you return to the same place just to see it differently. What used to feel like drowning now feels like standing on the shore. And that shift, however small, is progress. The deeper truth is, we don't attract pain, we attract lessons. And when the lesson is heard, truly integrated, the pattern dissolves on its own. Not because we forced it away, but because we finally outgrew it. Some chapters don't need to be rewritten, they need to be closed with grace. There will come a day when you feel the trigger rise, but instead of reacting, you breathe. Instead of spiraling, you anchor. And in that moment, everything changes. You are no longer the version of you that needed the pain. You were the one who witnessed it, honored it, and chose peace instead. That moment is not the end. It's the beginning. Sometimes, the most radical act is choosing not to repeat, not to reply, not to return. There is quiet power in walking away, not from others, but from the version of yourself that accepted less than you deserved. You do not need to explain. Peace doesn't beg to be understood. It simply becomes your boundary. The pain you keep meeting is not a punishment, it's a reflection of the places within you still seeking safety, still craving truth. When you begin to offer that to yourself, not waiting for others, you become your own refuge. And in becoming your own refuge, repetition loses its grip. Healing doesn't always look like transformation. Sometimes it's simply choosing not to say that harsh word, choosing to rest instead of push, choosing to listen when the ego wants to fight. These choices are small, but they shift timelines. They are the invisible architecture of a new life. You don't need to understand every wound to begin healing. Sometimes it starts with a simple question. What would love do now? Ask it when the familiar ache arises, when the old story plays, when the temptation to repeat comes knocking. Let that question guide your next breath. Repetition ends not when you fight it, but when you outgrow it. Not with resistance, but with clarity. When you stop seeing yourself as broken and start seeing yourself as learning. The same pain only returns when it still has something to teach. But eventually, the teacher bows and you walk on, wiser. You may notice one day that the old pain doesn't sting as it once did. The memory visits, but it no longer controls you. This isn't forgetting its freedom. You learned to hold your wounds with tenderness, not shame. And in that gentleness, they softened. The loop didn't break itself. You outgrew the story. Spiritual growth isn't about bypassing pain, it's about being with it fully until it no longer defines you. Until you see clearly, pain was the doorway, not the destination. You entered it asleep, but you emerged awake. And now, you carry light where the wound once lived. Some part of you always knew you weren't meant to stay stuck. You were meant to break patterns, not inherit them. To feel fully, then rise wholly. You are the one who ends what no longer serves and begins what your soul has waited lifetimes to remember. Peace, presence, power. The old stories may still whisper, but you no longer answer. You have a new language, now one built on truth, not trauma. You speak from the heart, not the wound. And when others bring their pain, you meet them with empathy, not entanglement. This is how healing ripples outward. This is not the end. It is the beginning of a new rhythm. One where you no longer chase closure, but live open. Where pain isn't the center of your story, awareness is. And in that awareness, you finally understand. The pain kept returning not to break you, but to bring you home.